Welcome to Canton Confidential. It was day 2 of jury selection, and a lot of progress was made. Thanks for joining us, everyone. I'm J.C. Monahan.
I'm Glenn Jones. 7 jurors have now been seated for the second round of the Commonwealth versus Karen Read. 5 were chosen today. They joined 2 others who were selected on Tuesday. For a closer look at today's proceedings, we want to bring in our John Maroney.
He was in court today keeping track of the jury selection process.
The defendant starts this trial presumed to be innocent.
Judge Beverly Cannoni addressing another group of potential jurors for Karen Read's second murder trial. The 45-year-old defendant says she's not guilty of hitting and killing her boyfriend John O'Keefe with her SUV.
Jury selection, particularly in a highly publicized case where you have hundreds of potential jurors, becomes a wild card.
During the process, Karen Read sits with her defense team, including her newest attorney, Victoria George, an alternate juror in the first trial. They review the 3-page questionnaire jurors must answer before going to sidebar with the judge, the prosecution, and defense. The judge says she isn't sure how long the jury selection will last, unlike the trial.
I'm told by the lawyers that their best estimate of how long the evidence will take will be 6 to 8 weeks.
The potential jurors were polled. 89% of them said they knew of the case. 44% said they had formed an opinion. And 16% said they had a bias either for or against Karen Read.
The best you can do is try to find jurors who will listen to the evidence and keep an open mind.
Read stopped this morning to acknowledge shouts from her supporters. They're being kept back because of an expanded buffer zone, prompting a federal lawsuit to get that zone lifted.
I just think they don't want us out there showing support for the First Amendment and against the corruption, standing up against the corruption. They want to hide us.
A hearing on the expanded buffer zone is now set to take place in federal court Friday. Jury selection is set to resume here tomorrow morning. In Dedham, John Maroney, NBC 10 Boston.
We are joined now by Michael Coyne, our trusted legal analyst from the Massachusetts School of Law. Michael, we have talked about just how many potential jurors are available in this case. We made some progress today, which is great.
A lot of progress.
So let's narrow this down because we want to talk about what we found out. The juror breakdown from today is the big takeaway is so many people already know the case. 80 potential jurors said, yep, I've heard of it. Dozens more have already formed an opinion. Another 14 admit, I have a bias about this. Michael, when you take all of that into consideration, you said we made good progress today, but what happens when you get information like that as a lawyer in terms of moving forward? We need more than 7.
Right. Well, you get even more concerned to make sure that you weed out those that, despite what they say about being objective and listening to the evidence, really are downplaying what their real beliefs are. And that's a real worry. And it's a real worry for me in this case, simply because everyone at this point knows about the case. And most people have an opinion on one way or the other. And so you've got to be extraordinarily careful as the lawyers in trying to make sure that those jurors don't get on the panel.
Yeah.
All right, so this is a rare situation where we've done this before. So let's see what happened in the first trial as it relates to jury selection. 7 jurors were picked on day 2 last time. Of course, our reporting today is that we got 5. After 2 days, we had 11 seated in 2024. Right now, we're at 7, 4 men and 3 women. So when you look at this list, it also says at the bottom there that we got to 19 on the panel and pared it down to 16. Where do you think we're going in terms of a full panel? And is 16 enough, considering what we learned the last time, where we almost went through everybody on the alternate set?
Yeah, I would hope that we're looking at a panel of 18. And then that way it gives us 6 alternates. They won't know they're alternates until the trial is concluded and the case is submitted to the jury. But I do think when you're talking about a trial, it can take as long as 2 months. People get sick, their jobs call them away. There's all sorts of problems, and that doesn't even get us into people are doing things online or being influenced as they shouldn't be. So I would hope that we're looking at least 18. Last time we started with 19, and we came very close at the end to just keeping 12 in the box.
I got really nervous at the end.
Well, exactly, because we were whittling it down. There's been so much media, like we mentioned, just circling back. In addition to a Vanity Fair article, 2020 Dateline, there was the 5-part docuseries, and that actually, for me at least, gave me more information than what the trial gave. So again, I just ask, like, how do you really know what they've been influenced clearly, but how do you really know that they're going in clean and unbiased?
You don't. And that's the worry. That's happened in the Marathon bombing case. People profess to have expressed no opinion, and now that case has to be revisited because at least 2 of the jurors had put stuff online indicating that he should fry or words to that effect, and it now challenges whether that verdict in fact was fair. We won't know whether these jurors have done things along those lines till we actually have their names, and the lawyers will have that, and they will be able to research it more thoroughly before we actually begin to make sure that, at least outwardly, there's none of that bias that a lot of people are acknowledging they have.
Well, one of the tools here for the court is a lengthy questionnaire that I know JC has actually gone through and tried to answer some of the questions yourself.
Just wondering if I could be a juror. I was just curious.
Well, let's see what the questionnaire says about media exposure. In the 3-page document, they're asked how often they're exposed to the news from radio, TV, podcasts, and social media. That's question number 7. So I guess my question for you, Michael, is a well-informed juror bad for one side or the other?
It depends on where the information is coming from, right? I mean, if it is unbiased media that gives a balanced approach and you're hearing information, you still have to be concerned that too much information in advance means that they may foreclose their ability to examine this case only on the evidence in the second trial. But at the end of the day, what you're worried about is, well, what if they're getting influenced by less than legitimate news sources, so it's completely slanted one way or the other? And we know there's an awful lot of sources out there that do just that now that we're looking at social media.
There's so much out there. Can we pull up a few more of the questions that are on the questionnaire? Because it's not just the media. It also asks questions about police. One question asked, do you believe police officers are generally fair and accurate in their investigations? Another one said, do you have strong personal beliefs about law enforcement officers, prosecutors, or government? We know, having gone through this the first time, what they're getting at here, right? Usually you'd be a little more in the dark, but what do you make of those questions?
Well, in a lot of criminal cases, you do want to ask potential jurors whether they believe law enforcement is more believable or less believable. So this goes a little further than your general questions that you might ask the jury, and we know why. There's all sorts of problems with the investigation and preservation of the evidence here. And so what they want to make sure, at least to the extent they can in advance, that they don't come in with preconceived bias against or for law enforcement.
All right, Michael, our viewer questions are flowing in once again.
Okay.
Let's get to one of them right now. It comes from Gina, and Gina wants to know, why is the same judge presiding for the new trial? They have a new jury. Why not a new judge, Michael?
Cases in our Superior Court are assigned to the judge that's in that county. And now, since Judge Cannoni heard it the first time, she is still in the county, and it makes sense. I know people don't understand that always. It makes sense for her to hear it.
And it's common.
And it's very common, and it's very common. And, you know, frankly, she's gotten a bad rap. I've tried cases before, judges that aren't nearly as patient and deliberate as she is. And I think she's done a fair job with this case, and it's time to cut her a little bit of slack as we get closer to the end, hopefully.
Yeah.
All right, and we want to hear from Brian. He also wrote in asking if the defense would hire a forensic physicist. He mentioned the slippery surface of the snow would not be enough for the car to get up to speed to break the light if she hit John O'Keefe. He doesn't think that it was fast enough to even impact the plastic tail light against what he was calling a soft tissue of a body. So is there this? I mean, this is the crux of the whole thing,
Sure.
right? But is there someone in particular that hasn't taken the stand that could talk to this?
Well, the defense and the prosecution has opportunities to ask the court to allow expert testimony on a variety of issues, and especially this time, I think we're going to see to a much greater extent hard science with respect to whether that vehicle, her vehicle, could have impacted him in some way to leave him on the side of the road and then die. I don't know who, at the end of the day, they're intending now to lay that foundation. I don't believe such a witness is on the list, but they do have accident reconstruction experts scheduled for both sides here, and that'll be very telling.
You know, for me, it just goes back to how people have already decided for themselves.
Yeah, they're entrenched.
I don't know how fast a car has to go to break a tail light, but people have camped out in one or the other and made those decisions. So we're looking for somebody who can claim, I'm an expert.
But at the end of the day, even the expert is not going to solve the problem for those that are decidedly on one side or the other. Experts get paid to testify. I'm not calling them if they aren't testifying favorably for me. And like a lawyer, like others who provide opinions, that opinion can vary. And, you know, the old joke is that it varies depending on who's paying me.
That's right. Michael Coyne, thank you very much. Some good analysis today. If you have questions about the trial, feel free to send them our way. All you need to do is email us at the address you see on your screen. We will answer as many questions as we can.
Yeah, we love hearing from you. Remember, NBC 10 Boston is your source for everything related to the Karen Read trial. Don't forget to tune in weeknights, 7 o'clock, for a full recap of the day's court proceedings right here on Canton Confidential.